So that's much more likely to be listened to by the child than saying, you have made this terrible mess again, simply by reporting on how she feels, by prefixing with the word I.
So what's the F for then, Joe?
Well, the F stands for the freedom to own your own problem. So often in life, problems are exacerbated by do-gooders moving in and assuming that because a problem exists, they should be the one to solve it. People who have studied the human condition over millennia have noted that one of the things that marks out human beings is that they're problem solvers, and that we actually are happier in our life when we have problems to solve. And so that therefore you can think of problems as people's capital. They are developmental opportunities. And because a problem exists, you don't have to steal it and try and solve it. Our children grow through solving problems. So the first thing to ask yourself when a problem exists, is this problem mine? Is it my responsibility to solve it? And if it isn't, in the first place, allow the person to whom the problem belongs to have a go at solving it. Indeed, with our children, unless our children actually ask us for help, we should let them get on in sorting out their relationship problems, sorting out their homework problems. But if they ask us for help, of course, by all means, at that point, give them the benefit of our accumulated wisdom, such as it is. And finally, of course, we were left with the E. The E stands for everybody should be a winner. In any negotiation, in any conflict situation, our attitude of mind should be that each person in the conflict has a set of needs, and that we should endeavour to try and get each person's set of needs met. And this applies whether you're talking about international negotiations such as have recently taken place in Northern Ireland, or whether you're talking about negotiations between parents and kids. Let me just give you a simple example from my own life, in fact, with kids. When we moved house a couple of years ago, we were having a lot of arguments with our daughter because she was totally messing up her bedroom. She would take out all the tiles and fling them all around the bedroom, and this was driving my wife, Liz, she was getting very irritated by it. And as complaints were getting nowhere, I finally got around to doing some active listening, and I actually asked my daughter, and I said, well, why do you have to put all these ties out? She said, Daddy, isn't it obvious? She said, we've moved into a new house, I've got new friends. How can my friends know what ties they want to play with unless they can see all my ties? So there was a perfectly good reason why she had to keep the room messed up. Now, recognizing what her need was, I put up a series of shelves all around the walls of her bedroom, so it looked rather like a shop, but her friends could instantly see what her full range of ties were and take down the appropriate ones. So by perceiving her need, the conflict could be resolved. Another example that one hears about from time to time is the father who comes home from work and he finds his kids glued to some Australian soap opera, as is often the case. And he feels frustrated and says, I've been away all day, I want to have communication with you. And the children want to watch the film, of course. So when one particular father said to his kids, I would like to talk to you, but obviously you want to watch the film. Now, how can we resolve this? The kids come back with a suggestion. Well, what we can do, Daddy, is we'll record the soap opera and we'll watch it after tea. So when you come in, we won't be watching television. Now, the children saw a way that both sets of needs could be met. And this applies in any level of negotiation. Not to look for winners or losers, but look to see what the needs are that need to be met. So that everybody gets something out of the negotiation.
Joe, let's just look at a real problem that seems to be escalating, and people are getting killed, and a lot of misery is being caused by road rage. What can we do about road rage?
Well, I think firstly we need to understand the reasons why it's occurring more frequently. And there are a number of environmental and sociological reasons, apart from psychological reasons. For example, there is the increasing amount of traffic in our roads. This has the effect of increasing levels of frustration. It now takes longer to get around London by motor car than it did by horse and carriage at the turn of the century. So there's increasing levels of frustration because of increasing congestion. Another factor that's going on is that often on the roads you need to make decisions in a fraction of a second, and your life could depend upon it. Now that means you have to be at a reasonably high level of physiological arousal to be able to make such instant reactions, which means that you're closer to the level at which you could trigger off emotional reactions. A third factor is that when we're in our car, we often feel as though we're in a little world of our own, and we see other people in their cars as being more like objects than people. I'm sure you've had the experience, of, say, when you were close to home, of being annoyed by some driver, and you were ready to make a frown at them or even to wave your fist when you recognize the neighbour, and suddenly a big smile comes on your face because you realise this is an inappropriate way to address the neighbour. So it brings back your perception of the other person as a human being. Something about being in cars, we tend to lose sight that we're actually dealing with human beings. Those are some of the environmental reasons. But in terms of our psychology as well, because of the increased pressures on individuals throughout society, and because of the increased consciousness of time pressure, people often in cars are in a state of mind where they feel they must get to the end of their journey in the shortest possible time. And that creates a huge pressure on them. We need to do something about taking that pressure off, because what we need to do is to be driving focused when we're driving. We need to be able to take an attitude in mind that the drive is going to take however long it takes to get there safely. And to do that, we need to rethink out our attitude towards getting to our destination. We need to start out and say to ourselves, look, I'm going to drive safely, and it's better to get to my destination in one piece intact than to arrive by ambulance. We also need to do something about demonizing other drivers, because that's what sends our own anger levels sky high, and it places us in greater danger of provoking more angry responses from other drivers. So how can we stop demonizing the other driver? Well, in talking to people up and down the country, I've been asking them, how do you do that? And the kind of things I find that people tell me work for them is reminding themselves, for example, that the other person may be under pressure, reminding themselves that everybody makes a mistake when another driver makes a mistake, reminding themselves that they don't have to let that other driver control them, and that they can choose to move out of the fast lane into the inside lane, and that they can stay in control of their own physiology. Why should they allow that person to drive their physiology out of control? Again, another very useful thing to do is we need to monitor our own physiological arousal level as we're driving. And if we're starting to find that we're getting tensed up and our knuckles are getting white in the wheel, we should just simply relax, taking a nice slow breath, breathe out slowly, and allow ourselves to relax. Again, I've known people who, on the very day they were going on holiday, in order to distress themselves, they've got out a road map and they've figured out how many miles is it to the Lake District, and they've calculated what's the briefest possible time I can get there. And then they create this incredible pressure on themselves, driving their stress levels sky high, and the very journey that's supposed to start bringing you down. So it's about awareness and applying some of these common sense measures that we've mentioned in the tape already.
I notice that one of the techniques you were suggesting is really reframing what's going on in such a way that keeps you calm. And of course, the reframe doesn't actually have to be true, but it may be true. I mean, somebody who's overtaking you aggressively or aggressively tailgating you may actually be urgently needing to get to hospital.
Yes, and the important reframing is this, Ivan. When we're in our emotional brain, we can only see reality one-dimensionally. But as soon as we can get two reasons for something, we put ourselves back into the observing part of ourselves, and our emotional level goes down. And interestingly enough, what the research is now showing is that the most potent ingredient in psychotherapy, for whatever condition, the most potent ingredient is helping the person get a new perspective on their problem, a new understanding that somehow creates more choice. So it's the reframing element that is the single most potent part of helping people deal with any emotional distress. And for example, let's take it out of another context just to see how this reframing can work. Supposing, you're getting angry with your child because your child seems to be really stubborn. You could remind yourself that this stubbornness demonstrates your child's ability to stand up for herself and not allow herself to be bullied. Certainly you wouldn't want your child to lose that ability to stand up for herself. No parent would. But if you were to eliminate that stubbornness, your child would be walked all over for the rest of her life. And again, bringing that perspective in suddenly starts to calm down, and you start to have a different attitude towards your child's stubbornness. Or supposing a woman is feeling unhappy because, and of course it could be a man as well, but supposing you go into a neighbour's house and they're one of these people, who their house is absolutely perfect. Everything is in its place, it's spotless. And you start to feel, oh gosh, my home never looks like this. Well, you can do a reframe on that by saying to yourself, look, my home is a home with a relaxed atmosphere. And it's true. Most people do feel more comfortable in a house where things are a bit of a mess, rather than in a house where everything is pristine condition. So this way of looking at things, again, when it comes to people, we could have a friend say that we like a lot, but it was a terrible sense of time. And rather than railing and getting worked up about our friend's inadequate dealing with timing, we could remind ourselves, look, my friend has got some lovely qualities, and what I really like about her is her easygoing nature. And her lackadaisical attitude to timekeeping is part of that easygoing nature. It's part of the package. And in recognizing that, we stop demonizing the person, and we can have a more balanced attitude through that reframe, looking at a thing in a broader perspective or from a different angle.
Of course, there are times when we feel there's an injustice, or we are genuinely justified in getting some urgent change which is not in the interest of the other person. So how can we deal with the communications without getting angry?
Well, firstly, we need to recognise, of course, that when we get angry, we're turning on an alarm reaction to defend our lives. Now, most situations where we are unhappy with conditions do not necessitate a fight or flight reflex response. We need to develop some strategy for resolving the problems. So, the best way to approach it then is that if you want to criticise somebody, if you have a genuine grievance against somebody, say you're an employer and you're unhappy with an employee's work, one of the best ways of approaching that is to start off by giving a compliment.